Welcome to this very special edition of the Pacing Board. I'm Brian Pacing Boarding live at this year's 2025 Jersey City Jazz Festival here in the heart of Exchange Place, here in downtown Jersey City, New Jersey. Blessing the band stage is composer, arranger, producer, father, chameleon of jazz and rock music, the great Stephen Bernstein. Now, Stephen Bernstein has not only been a force in the New York music scene for 4 decades, this gentleman has collaborated with the likes of Hal Wilner, as well as performer groups like the Lounge Lizards. Now, what makes this guy so very unique is that he's arranged and composed for some very important movies like Get Shorty, as well as the iconic Kansas City, directed by the great Robert Altman. Tonight you're going to see highlights of the Millennial Territorial Orchestra featuring Grammy-nominated vocalist Catherine Russell. We had a chance to sit down and talk about the dissection of how he writes and composes for this orchestra and ensemble, but also talk about his thought process when it comes to revisioning music as well as composing for film and television. We also sit down and talk about and reflect on the life of Hal Wilner as well as the great Henry Butler. So sit back, relax, and enjoy highlights of Mr. Stephen Bernstein performing with his Millennial Territorial Orchestra featuring Catherine Russell, live here on the Pacing Board from this year's 2025 Jersey City Jazz Festival. Pointer Sisters and Alan Toussaint, they're upstairs smiling. I love that rendition of Yes You Can.
And that was, like I say, we don't get to do this music that much, but that went to a place that's never gone before. When it went completely out,
yeah,
like that just happened. Like I just said, okay, what happens? And that's the beauty of being a jazz band as opposed to just a dance band. You know, even though we play dance rhythms, we're still a jazz band. And we were in that groove, and I just started saying, I pushed the horns, and then what happened was the rhythm section said, well, we're coming too. And we all kind of went to outer space together. And then, of course, the audience, it's beautiful because they're taking the trip with us. They're like, we're all taking this trip for the first time together. And that, to me, is what live music is about.
My intro, I call you a chameleon because what you've done since '79, you've composed film scores, you've led multiple bands, you've been in bands, you are a soloist. I mean, what you've done with this band and even Sex Mob, which we'll get to in a minute, is you revision how music is not supposed to be. How do you interpret being modern but also staying within the tradition?
Well, you know, we were talking earlier, Brian, about how I grew up, about growing up in the Bay Area in the 60s. I tell people I'm a child of the revolution. And I always go back and tell people, like, you know, you have to understand, when I grew up, our culture was the hippies and the Black Panthers. That was our culture. And so we really grew up, I was, as a young person, like in a time where Americans were really embracing being in the now. You know what I'm saying? People were really embracing things. But being a musician and having great teachers, I always had older teachers. And I loved Louis Armstrong and I loved Duke Ellington. So the idea was, okay, here's the thing. I love Louis Armstrong. I love Duke Ellington, but I'm a product of right now. So how do I mix up these two things together? And it was kind of a fearless time. It was a revolutionary time, right? So it's kind of natural. It's like being a natural revolution. Like revolutionary is a weird word because it can mean so many things. But you're asking, like, how do I mix these things up where it's of the time and it's not of the time? Because I want to really, as a musician, you know, it's so important to really honor the tradition of music. I mean, all musicians are like a combination of scientists and mystics, really, because there's a science to how music works. But a friend of mine recently said this great quote. He said this guy said he's more shaman than showman. But you know, it's a mixture of being a shaman and being a showman, and being a scientist and understanding the history. So the way I don't know how I do it, but I will say it's on purpose, and it's very purposeful of really embracing the things I love about jazz music, but really being true to who I am and how I grew up. I always tell people, like, those rhythms you heard today, those are rhythms that we naturally play. Those are our native rhythms. Do you understand?
Right.
But the same, like you're talking about Yes We Can, there are elements in there from Duke Ellington. There's elements in there from Sun Ra. There's elements in there from P-Funk. There's elements in there from Alan Toussaint. It's all in there. And it's just, everyone, you know, we all make our own gumbo.
I grew up in the era of public television, and we had sophisticated television shows like The Electric Company,
absolutely,
Zoom, Sesame Street.
Yep.
And when you were doing Yes You Can, I was thinking about the Pointer Sisters because there was a little cartoon, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now, people are shocked when I tell them that's the Pointer Sisters.
I know it is, yeah.
But also, in that time, I remember I was a little kid. My parents took me to the drive-in to see a movie called Car Wash. And the Pointer Sisters were of the church.
Right.
And they're singing, "You Got to Believe." And the thing that I told you earlier about the Pointer Sisters, that those first 2 or 3 records, they were a myriad, because they're from the Bay Area. It was a myriad of gospel, blues, jazz, And funk and R&B.
and hippie.
Yeah.
They dress like hippies. They didn't dress like church people.
Yeah.
They more use clothes.
Yeah, you're right. You're 100% correct. It's like, and the music, unfortunately, when you become commercial, you have to sell hits. You have to make hits. You have to make hits.
Yeah.
But that's what I think has happened with music today. We've lost this edge of trying to be cutting edge. And now it seems like all the musicians, even our icons, like, I hate to say it, Bruce Springsteen, they're trying to just go with the flow.
Well, I kind of feel that the whole idea of social media and short attention spans has kind of created this thing where people want the familiar, people want the known, and especially when you see things on like your telephone, boom, 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 it's impressive, people like something that's, and we dug ourselves some holes tonight. Like I said, we went someplace we've never been. I'll never forget one time I was really lucky enough to be at a dinner with Clark Terry, with a bunch of trumpet players, and Clark Terry was not the oldest trumpet player. There were some old guys, and I was like the fly on the wall. I just kept my mouth shut, listened, and these guys, and then Clark looked at me and goes, Stephen, he says, you know what jazz is about? I said, well, tell me, Mr. Terry. He goes, it's about digging yourself in a hole and figuring how do I get out? And that is, a lot of people are afraid to make mistakes. And to me, that's the beauty of jazz, is getting yourself in that place. And it's going to get a little sloppy. It's going to get a little mysterious to get out of there. But it feels so good to get there. And that's why this is, jazz music and not show music, not pop music. And again, like, I don't want to put this music down. It's just a different, I'm not saying this in a negative way. I'm just saying a lot of times if you hear some stuff that are very incredible traditional jazz musicians, it's so safe and rehearsed that it sounds great, it's impressive, but where's that feeling of like, where is this going? That mystery, that thing of like, man, what's happening here? And then like, oh, that's what's happening here. And that, for me, and that's the beauty of music, it's everyone's got their own philosophy. And Brian, we have to accept that the younger people are going to have a different philosophy than us. And I'm not saying because, listen, Ambrose Akim Series, one of my good buddies, I was just talking
to him. He's from your area.
Yeah, I was just talking to him yesterday, telling him how much I love his new records. And he's, and he's telling me, like, because he teaches and he's around younger people, he said, no, Stephen, I think this next generation is going to be really more willing to embrace the mystery, embrace the chaos. And I also think maybe that the world is so chaotic that maybe people don't feel comfortable being chaotic. They want the known. You know what I'm saying? Like, I grew up in a world where like chaos seemed cool. Chaos was part of the story.
That's what hip hop is all about.
Right.
Hip hop, in my generation, it was really, I had a whole gumbo. I mean, in your neck of the woods, the Bay Area, we had the Cool, we had the Souls of Mischief, Too Short,
Del the Funky
Del the Funk, and then down south I had Outkast, I had Goody Mob, I had UGKs, and then East Coast, they had their own thing going on, and the Midwest had our own thing. It's like now regionalism, even with R&B and jazz, you could tell a trumpet player who came from New Orleans.
Oh yeah,
automatically.
Yeah.
You could tell a person, a drummer that came from New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell a person who came from Detroit, piano player, keyboard player, bass player. You can tell people who are from your neck of the woods, the Bay Area. What has happened to that?
Well, that I don't think is necessarily a negative thing. I think that's just a result of education and globalization. I think the idea is of education. Everyone's taught these things, so they're taught, and so everyone's like learning the same information. And that's why some people, like, when they talk about some musicians, I think younger musicians, that's oftentimes you hear is like, oh, everyone plays the same stuff, and so it's just how you get information, like, because every piece of information is now available on your telephone. You open up your telephone, your Google's on blah, blah, blah. Now, the thing is, a place like New Orleans, there's still the New Orleans, but plenty of people now move to New Orleans and learn that style. Of course, they're not going to sound like real New Orleans musicians, but they'll sound pretty close.
Right.
Especially for tourists who don't know the difference. I mean, I don't know the difference.
Right.
But, you know, and, you know, I had that band with Henry Butler, which was so great. And the people in New Orleans loved that band, because what we did, it was this band, MTO, but with a New Orleans rhythm section. We did the first gig, was with this rhythm section. Henry said, well, I want to try this with a New Orleans rhythm section. I said, oh, okay, Henry, I don't really understand why, man. It sounded really good. He said, no, it sounded great, but... And then when we did with New Orleans rhythm section, and we made the record with Herlin and Reggie Veal, I heard what he was talking about, because somebody had that New Orleans rhythm. Now, you heard my music today. You heard funk, but it also heard free.
Yeah.
And you also heard chaos, like that. But in New Orleans, they don't really do that. It's that New Orleans rhythm. Once that's in a song, that song stays there. And I'm more from psychedelic, like, oh, we're gonna go somewhere else for a minute, but we'll come back eventually. And when we played that music where the rhythm didn't change, but the horns did, it was very powerful. And people in New Orleans said to me, man, Alan Toussaint himself said to me, Stephen, he said, you really came up with something. And when Alan Toussaint tells you that,
right,
you know you came up with something. Because we had really come up with an original, but the thing was, when Henry passed away, I told the guys in the band, well, I just want to tell you something. We may play this music again, but we're not going to be a New Orleans band again. Because the reason we were a New Orleans band, because Henry's rhythm on the piano gave it that. And I don't want to do that with a guy who can play New Orleans piano that's not a New Orleans musician. You know what I'm saying? The only way to really do it is to actually do it with someone from that source. So that's something about regionalism that, you know, and there are, I mean, you know, Sullivan Fortner, man. Wow. Talk about a magic spirit, huh?
He's one of my favorite guys.
He is a magic spirit.
Yeah,
I mean, they're out there. I mean, I would love to hook up with him. But
y'all should do that. Y'all should do that.
I know, he's magic. But you know, that's the thing is, there are so many incredible young musicians right now. So whenever people start to say this thing, and sometimes I agree with them, I said, but you also have to realize there are so many incredible young musicians right now, more than ever. I mean, less personalities, because that's the world we live in. There's, you know, because again, it goes back to this thing that's so much information that everyone's pulling in, like, you know, it's the things you don't know that make you who you are. Everyone knows so much now.
Right.
You know?
Well, I've been all across the country, and I played in every town, trying to find my baby. No one seen him around, no. And you know which way I'm headed. If my baby can't be found, baby, found. Well, I spoke to the river, and the river spoke back to me. And he said, you look so lonely, you look full of misery, full of misery. And if they find you, baby, take him for a ride.
I want to talk about trumpet.
Yes, sir.
On the band stage, and I've seen you perform. This is the first time I've seen you perform this. Because I've seen you perform with Henry, and I'm trying to figure out when this was.
I remember, that's where I met you.
Yes, but also Sex Mob. These bands that you have are interesting because the music that you present to the music fans and that you compose and you put out there are like, damn, it's like, it's modern day avant-garde.
Yeah.
Is that the psychedelia in you, or is that?
It's what I grew up listening to. I mean, so we were talking before about, you know, Sly and Tower Power, like the bands that were from my part of the world that we heard on the radio, and then dance, you know, just the age I am. When you went to a party, what did you dance to? Dance to P-Funk, dance to Earth, Wind & Fire, blah, blah, blah. So that's all the rhythms that I grew up with. But when bands were touring, Peter Applebaum was a tenor player in the band. We started playing together when I was 12. So I've been playing with Peter for over 50 years. I was in his band. I joined his band when I was 12.
Jesus.
Yeah, Peter was what we call child prodigy. Peter could like play like an adult when he was a teenager on multiple instruments, on saxophone, piano, and drums. And he had a band. And he'd take me, he would say, let's go see this guy. So I saw Ross on Roland Kirk in 7th grade. I saw Sam Rivers in 8th grade. I saw Cecil Taylor probably 9th grade. Don Cherry and the Art Ensemble probably 10th grade, you know. That was the music that was touring at that time. When you would go to Keystone Corner, that music was what now people call avant-garde, but we just called it was just jazz. That's how jazz sounded.
Right.
I mean, yes, you could go here when Dexter started touring again. You could hear bebop, and Sonny Stitt was still. Blue Mitchell would come up from LA and he played bebop. But Eddie Henderson was our local trumpet player, and he played very modern. Freddie was playing very modern at the time. You know, that was before he had kind of like, you know, Freddie was playing super modern, like intense music. So all the music I heard in that era, when I started going to hear live music in 74, 75, 74 probably, you know, 74, 73, 74, that's what it was. It was, if you went to see McCoy, man, McCoy was, I mean, yes, rhythmically it was different than Cecil Taylor, but energy-wise, it was just as intense.
You know what's crazy? You brought up McCoy. I think maybe 3 of the piano players that after I saw him, I was just drained.
Right.
Him, Joe Zawinul, and Herbie. They left me drained. Not in a bad way, but it was like, wow, what did I just experience?
Right. Well, that is the beauty of live music, because that's when they really take you somewhere. You know what I'm saying? They're not putting on a show.
Right.
They're not putting, like, if that experience is not from a show, that experience is experiencing humanity and the power of humanity. So going back to what you asked about avant-garde, it's like I'm taking the rhythms I grew up with and the music I grew up with and putting it in the natural way. You know, because the free, in a sense, that free, chaotic, like, rhythm, you see I use it a little bit, but I like a dance rhythm, man. I just like it. And I feel jazz, so swing's a dance rhythm too.
Right.
It's all, so I like that dance rhythm, but also, those are just my influences. I mean, you can't imagine what it would be like to being 12, 13 years old and seeing Ross on Roland Kirk and being like, I didn't know that was like one of a kind. I mean, I knew he was amazing, but I didn't realize that's just one of a kind you're seeing there, you know. And those concerts, those shows were wild. And he would play everything. He'd play a New Orleans tune. He'd play a super fast tune. He'd play a kind of very free song. He would play a ballad. He used to play "Since I Loved You." I remember that was the big ballad he used to always play when I saw him. So I came up with this idea. I mean, when I was coming up, I heard music that brought in everything. So it was very natural for me to do that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, I'm just doing what comes naturally, to be honest.
Do you think the composing part because I noticed your musicians, I mean, and I know some of them personally, they fall in line, because the average person can't play what you're composing. I'm being serious. You know where I'm going with this.
Well, yeah, they've been, listen, I've been playing with those people. Peter, I've been playing with for 50 years. Ben Porowski, the drummer, you can see he goes anywhere, right?
Right.
And you know, Ben is like, talking about child prodigy, man. And this cat was like, you know, playing with Mike Stern and Ricky Lee Jones and James Moody when he was like 20 years old. This guy could like, but I've been playing music with him since he was in high school. So I've been playing with Ben for over 40 years. The clarinet player I've been playing with for over 40 years. Bass player I've been playing with for 40 years. So they understand the language, and they're also amazing musicians. So they're willing. They both have, you know, they have the ability to, like, I can put music in front of them, and they can play it. But they can also, you can see when I say, okay, we're going here, they'll just take it wherever.
Going back to what I said earlier, you got the flugelhorn, you have the regular trumpet, and then you have the slide trumpet.
Right.
And I want to confirm something with you. Is it true that Sex Mob was created on a 6-pack, and you taking the dare to learn, of wanting to learn how to play the slide trumpet?
Absolutely. I have been playing it. And I said, man, I would really like to learn to actually, like, I go and play a few things on it. So I started practicing it on Dave Douglas's advice, actually. Dave
Wow.
We were hanging out. Dave's a very frank person, you know, a little cold-blooded. And we're hanging out after the show. He goes, man, how'd you practice that thing? And I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. So then I said, well, I'm going to put together a band. And Michael Dorff was running the Knitting Factory. I've told this story plenty of times, but he was running the Knitting Factory, and he says to me, we're doing these shows, we're calling them the late night hang, because I can't pay a lot of money, pays $100, drink beer, and get a chance to work on the music. And I said, okay. I said, I've been wanting to, like, work on the slide trumpet. So the idea was, if I just show up and there's no trumpet, there's just a slide trumpet, that's going to force me to do this. And he said, okay. Because we're friends, that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. What's the band called? And I said, okay, how about like Stephen Bernstein Slide Trumpet Quartet? We're just, you know, shooting around, two old friends, bullshitting. He said, well, it sounds like Slide Trumpet Quartet, sounds like 4 slide trumpets. I said, okay, how about Slide Mob? So that's a cool name. And then I just goofing around and said, what about Sex Mob? And he goes, okay. I said, back then, he used to put the, you know, the ads in the Village Voice.
Right.
I said, you write Sex Mob in the Village Voice? He goes, yeah, why not, man? I said, okay. Now, I didn't know that 30 years later, I'd be a 63-year-old guy with a band called Sex Mob, you know?
And see, that's the spirit of this music. Like, who would ever thought someone from the inner city would talk about the atrocities and the chaoses that are going on in normal life, and it's called hip hop?
Yes.
And then to add insult to injury, graffiti now becomes this magnitude of beauty of art.
Right.
The dancing comes with this, and this all really, and I always tell people this, hip hop is really the sister and little brother of the blues.
Oh, yeah. Well, where are you from?
I'm originally from Indianapolis.
Okay. Well, so I moved here in '79, right? And I keep saying that. And so, like, '81, that's the first summer I stayed here, started hanging and playing. And you have to stand, like, I was really hanging out and would hang with people, and I knew graffiti writers. And then Africa Bambaataa, he used to spin at Danceteria. So we were hearing early hip hop before it was really outside. You know what I'm saying? '81, it was still pretty in New York centric, and graffiti was very New York centric. And when I remember the first tour I did of Europe, which was at '88 or '89, and suddenly I'm like in Norway, and I see graffiti in like Norway, and I realize, okay, this art form that came out of, like, you know, really people in dire situations in the Bronx, and I know the Brooklyn people are like, yeah, we did too, but, you know, the Bronx, really, you know, really a rough, if you were up in those neighborhoods, it was rough, man. that changed the world. That culture coming from the Bronx, man, that changed the world. That became the dominant, how about that? This whole thing we're talking about diversity.
Yeah.
Right? That became the dominant artistic culture of the world. This expression of these people, mainly in the Bronx, man.
Right.
I mean, yeah, Uptown too, and I know the Queens people are gonna be like, yeah, we had it. Brooklyn people, there's always that thing.
Right.
But really, the beginning, and I remember like, you know, playing parties, summer '82, and those first famous break dancers that we'd see in the movies and stuff. They used to they would be playing at the parties, like all those, you'd see Run DMC hanging out. Like it was very small, the downtown world and the early hip hop world, there was definitely a meeting back then.
Round and round, you've been a good old wagon. Tell me what you done, broke down. Now you better go around to the blacksmith shop and get yourself overhauled, because you know there ain't nothing about you that make a good woman crawl. You know that no one wants a baby when a real man can be found. You've been a good old wagon, tell me what you done, broke down. Yeah, baby, there's no need to cry. You don't have to make this no big show. I got a new man, and he knows what to do. You know that he's the king of the land, and that's why I had to give him a crown. He's been a good old wagon, broke down. He's a king of love, baby. He's a good old wagon. Broke down.
Flugelhorn, trumpet, slide trumpet.
Yes, sir.
I can think of some great flugelhorn players. Art Farmer,
Clark
Terry,
Freddie Hubbard.
Freddie Hubbard.
Freddie Hubbard.
Yes. And then there's a different world with the trumpet. But tell me some very important innovators on the slide trumpet.
You're looking at him. No one really practiced enough to play it. Chuck Finley, the incredible, greatest trumpet player from LA, this great studio trumpet player. I actually got to talk to him. He's not not an easy person to get in touch with. A bit private unless you know him well. But I talked to him. Over the pandemic, and it turned out that he actually this is gonna blow your mind, man. He played on a lot of records, and he would mix it with the trumpets, so he'd blend them together. But he played slide trumpet. There's a slide trumpet solo on Marvin Gaye, "Here My Dear," but it's not on the original album. It's when they re-released it with extra cuts.
Right.
There's an instrumental cut with a slide trumpet solo.
Wow.
On "Here My Dear" by Chuck Finley.
Now I've got to go listen to that. That's one of my favorite Marvin Gaye records.
Yeah.
So now I have to get the deluxe version. Okay.
Because it was actually Nick Payton. Thank you, Nick, who turned me on to that. Because he said, "Man, Steven, check this out," and he played it on, and Chuck played it on like some famous film scores. Maybe I remember watching. He played on Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
Played it as a little slide trumpet on Taxi. But he's not. I wouldn't know if you call him an innovator. It's just he just played it very well. I mean, to really do, I have a band I've had for 30 years that I've, made, been touring, like 30 years of not just gigs, of touring with the band. And that's when you want to use the word innovate, but the idea of like going out night after night and trying things and playing. But of course, what I did was I just listened to trombone players, and I was very influenced by them. So, it's before your time, but I don't know if you ever heard of Defunct.
Yeah.
Okay. So, in 1980, Defunct was the hottest band in New York. And Joe Bowie, who was Lester's little brother, played the trombone like Jimi Hendrix played the guitar. And I heard that, and I was like, okay, now I'm hearing something that we don't have in the Bay Area. In the Bay Area, we had Jimi Hendrix, we had wild jazz, but we didn't have the two of them combined together.
Right.
Joe was the first guy I kind of heard go like, no, man, we can take all this stuff and make it one. We can take all that Jimi Hendrix stuff and we can throw that into the jazz world too. And then Roswell Rudd was a huge influence on me, and Gary Valente, and then all of Ellington's trombone players, Lawrence Brown and Tricky Sam Nanton, Butter Jackson. I really love, and of course, that era of trombone playing, Jack Teagarden, Trummy Young. I really love the very vocal, because the trombone with a slide, think about the slide trumpet, you can make it sound like a voice, and you can make it sound like Jimi Hendrix.
Right.
So, yeah, both of those things going on.
Fred Wesley,
yes,
mastered that in the 70s.
Yes, he did.
And it's funny we're talking about trombone players, because that's probably next to trumpet one of the hardest wind instruments.
Oh yeah.
Because you've got there's a lot of the breathing technique. Just how do you do that?
Practice all day, every day. All day, every day. No, seriously, when I wake up, usually I try to start playing by 11 a.m. and I just play on and off all day till maybe 1 in the morning or so if I'm at home. I mean, that doesn't mean you play the whole time. It means you play, do an hour long practice, break, boom, boom, 20 minutes, boom, boom, do a break, 20 minutes, do that. And I just do that every day, all day. And that's the only way you can keep it going at my age. Because in the old days, 63 was old for a bass. Now, I know 80-year-old bass players who play incredible.
Right.
So I know it can be done. But you ask them, you say, what do? They say, I practice all day. You have to love practicing. It's like, and I love, that's my comfort zone. I love just having a horn in my face, and you don't necessarily practice music. It's almost like you're doing exercises to just keep, it's almost like as if you were like jumping rope all day, or doing push-ups, or lifting small weights.
Right.
It's very physical. It's a very physical thing. In fact, old friend of mine said to me, came up to me, was at the show, goes, man, you sound like so strong. Are you working all the time? I said, no, I'm practicing all the time.
Right.
And I do. I put on Columbo. And I just watch Columbo and just practice the trumpet. And my teachers told me the same thing as they got older. They were like, oh yeah, my trumpet teacher, he said, I just put on Hogan's Heroes.
Stephen, there are musical spirits that just can't be replicated.
No.
Maurice White, Earth, Wind and Fire. David Byrne, Talking Heads. Hal Wilner is another guy I have to put in that category because not only was he a fan of the music, but he saw things in you that I guess pulled out another. Like I told you, you're a chameleon, man. You can do. You're a master of all things and can do them well. First of all, tell me the first time you met him, and also what he means to this music.
Well, here's what I'm gonna tell the story. So in summer of '80, go back home to Berkeley, and with these good friends and family. They had 3 sisters, Engelhardt sisters, and their father, Peter Engelhardt, was a musician and instrument maker. And oftentimes you see he made all the instruments for Airto. You see his instruments on a lot. He made metal bells. If I don't know if you've seen, Airto would have like a mechanical woman he would play, a mechanical man. People see Shelly Manne would have these circular bells. Ben Perowski, my drummer, has a bunch of these bells. A lot of people have them. Peter was a fantastic musician, and you go to the house, you never knew who was going to show up. You know, Les McCann might be there, Airto might be there, Gismonti might be there, Charlie Hayden might be there. He knew everyone. So I go to the house, we'd hang out, you know, because you didn't know who was going to be there. And he had 3 beautiful sisters, 3 beautiful daughters, you know.
Right.
And so I go there, and he's like, "Man, Stephen, I got something to play. It's going to blow you. This is far out." I said, "What is it?" And it was Hal's first record, the Nina Rota record.
Really?
And now the Nina Rota record starts with Jackie Byard. The first thing you hear is Jackie Byard playing, and then it goes, and you got Carla Bley and Threadgill and Bill Frisell's very first performance on a record, and the very first New York recording of Branford and Wynton Marsalis playing a William Fisher arrangement. William Fisher was one of Atlantic Records' great arrangers. You know, he was a classically trained but very well known. He did a lot of stuff for Roberta Flack and everything like that. So here it is, a guy, and what does he got? Jackie Byard, Carl Bley, Henry Threadgill, and Debbie Harry from Blondie. You right? All this in one place. So I go like, this is what I've been waiting for. And I was like, but who's Hal Wilner? No one knows who Hal Wilner is. It just says Hal Wilner. Who's Hal Wilner? This is 1980. Get to New York, man. When I finally moved to New York and start to meet people, I'd be asking like, who knows Hal Wilner? Does anyone? Who is Hal Wilner? You know? And people say, oh yeah, well Hal. And then he got kind of famous. He made those big records, and that Disney record was quite a big record.
Yeah.
It sold a lot of copies. You know, and that record, of course, had Ringo, and it had Sting, and all these very famous people. And what happened was, I always like, how can I meet Hal Wilner? People like, oh, it's hard to meet Hal, man. And he's like, you know. And I did the David Sanborn show. Remember the night music show?
Love that show.
So I was in Carla Bley's daughter's band. Now this is a great story. It's going to tie it all together. So Carla Bley's, he wanted Carl on the show, and Carl said, I'll be on the show. But in Carla Bley's daughter's band was Sanborn's son. So Sanborn's son, Carla Bley's daughter, and Mingus' son, Eric Mingus, Jonathan Sanborn, Karen Mantler, and then a couple other musicians. And so I'm on the show playing with Karen, and then Carla told me, oh, I'm going to write a piece for you to play as well. And that was with the whole band. Sanborn's band was a big piece. And it was like kind of a big deal for me, because I'm maybe 29 years old, 28 years old, and here I am playing with, Don Elias and Omar Hakim and Hiram, right? I'm like, oh man, this is it, right? And Steve swallowed Carla, and I'm about to leave, and Bootsy says, well, where are you going? I'm like, we need horns. I'm like, oh, awesome. Now Bootsy's music, I knew every Bootsy song by heart. Like Bootsy, I knew, like those guys didn't know Bootsy's music. Oh, I mean, those guys, like
those are jazz guys. Those are jazz guys and also session guys.
And they're just, I don't know how big Bootsy was in New York, to be honest. Maybe he was. I mean, I think Vernon and those guys listen to a lot of Bootsy, but when I grew up, Bootsy was huge. So I so I had a great time, and you can see if you watch on TV, I'm acting. It's embarrassing because I'm so goofy because I'm like a little kid living his dream. Like I'm David Bootsy. I know all these parts, you know. Bam, we're about to pack up, and Alan Toussaint goes, "Hey, horns, where are you going?" And now I knew who Alan Toussaint was, but I wasn't that familiar with his music. It's, I need the horns as well. And then so now I'm playing with Alan Toussaint. And that was a show that Hal put together. Then after the show, the rehearsal, Hal comes up to me and goes, I had this band called Spanish Fly. My first band was a collective trio. This is Dave Tronco on slide guitar, Marcus Rojas on tuba. And Hal comes up to me and says, "Hey, it's nice to meet you. I'm Hal." And I said, "Oh man, Hal, I've been waiting to meet you." He goes, "Yeah, I've been coming to hear your band." I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, I come to all your shows." I said, "Well, I never, he goes, I sit in the back. And he says to me, "If there's anything I can do for you, you need any help making a record, just give me a call." And that's what happened. He literally came up to me and said, "I've been coming to see your band, been sitting in the back. Anything I can do for you, just give me a call." So he produced my first record for free.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was pretty famous. His manager did not want him doing that because, it meant money, it meant time he wasn't working on like a David Sanborn record.
Right.
But he really wanted to do it. And what happened was, he hired me to go on the Kansas City movie.
Right.
Originally, I was just supposed to help him choose the band. A lot of that band was like, I told him I said, I was going to say hire Nick Payton, blah, blah, blah. Certain people I said, a lot of people threw it, but there's definitely certain people I was like, no, you have to have Nicholas Payton, you have to have James Carter, and blah, blah. Some people were already like, of course, Josh Redman was really famous at that time, and a lot of people Hal had chosen. And what happened was we got there, and Hal thought that we'd be able to do all the music with just making it happen, because he was around these people like Ross on Roland Kirk who could do anything, right?
Right.
Well, most people aren't Ross on Roland Kirk, and it suddenly became clear that we needed arrangements. And Hal just said to me, I was supposed to just be there chilling out. Hal said to me, "Well, you can write arrangements." I'm like, yeah. He said, "Okay, get to work." And so suddenly it was really intense, and I'm here with not only Nicholas and Joshua and Christian McBride and Jerry Allen and Cyrus Chestnut and Don Byron and Mark Whitfield and Russell Malone and Kevin Mahogany and Jesse Davis. I mean, it was like this amazing band. I just had a little band. I said, "Look, we got to talk." I said, "They just told me their plan's not going to work, and I'm going to write arrangements." I said, "But just we're going to need to work together." Because that's the thing, when I work with musicians, a lot of people who are like what they call maestros, conductors, they've never been musicians, or it's been so long that they don't. Right. I've been a musician, so I know what it's like to be there and see. So I said, "Here's the deal. We're going to work with this together. I'm going to bring what I can. I'm going to make every night. I'm going to write arrangements." And I said, "Here's the deal. If any note doesn't sound right, don't even tell me. Change it. You guys are the best musicians. You know what to do. Don't have to say anything. You got it. You have a better note you think works better? Play it. And let's make it work." This is how, and they did it. And those guys, and Nicholas was quite young, man. He might have been 22 or something. And he invented the ending to every song. Because you know how trumpet leads the ending?
Yeah.
And he was just so amazing, man. Like, all these guys were so incredible and so willing to be like, okay, I gave them like the framework of an arrangement, and they just, and I don't know if you've seen that movie recently, but there's some amazing playing on it. So after that, Hal was like, "Oh, you're my guy," and he just started calling me for. He always said, well, especially said, "You're my R&B guy," because Hal didn't have that much of a connection with R&B so much because I had grown up with it. I was very comfortable with that kind of music, and I got to do some amazing arrangements for him, and work with amazing people, and that led me. And because I was associated with him, then suddenly it's like, oh, there's U2 calling you, and then Lou Reed's calling you, and you meet all these people who are like quite famous, but they trusted Hal so much, and they go like, well, you're Hal's guy, so you must be okay. And it really, and also because I did not, as much as I grew up listening to funk, I did not really grow up listening to rock. So I didn't treat these people I always say like, listen, I know you're great, but just so you know where I'm coming from, like, you're not Duke Ellington.
Right.
And I totally respect what you guys do. I'm gonna, you let me know what you need from me, but I'm just gonna try to help, whatever I can bring to your music. But a lot of people, they get in awe of rock musicians because like, oh my God, I grew up like, I didn't grow up with that music. I just say you guys are.
That's wild because rock and roll is a different beast.
It is.
And you said something earlier about the session musicians in New York, and it was a different time because I was with John Faddis earlier this week, and John was on a lot of R&B and rock stuff.
Oh yes, he was.
Him, Randy Brecker, Michael Brecker,
Yep.
David Sanborn,
Absolutely.
The drummer Steve Gadd,
Absolutely.
Hiram Bullock. There's like two handfuls of musicians that are straight ahead jazz cats that were on some I was walking around Whole Foods. I heard Carly Simon, "You Belong to Me," and I was like, "That's David Sanborn's
Right.
record. That's not Carly.
Right.
Do you have a favorite moment where you've soloed on or arranged something that is yours?
There's so many of them, but I'll say a couple. Most of them came from Hal, but I thought a lot. I mean, probably over 600 records.
I know.
But I will say one was the Marian Faithfull record, where
We just lost her.
Yeah. And I remember 3 really amazing arrangements, including a Bessie Smith song that we did with Lenny Pickett on sarrusophone, me on alto horn, Doug on the clarinet player here on Doug. That was incredible. But we also did, wow, my brain sometimes can't pull these songs out, but it's one of those really epic soul songs, and man, I can't pull it. It's an amazing arrangement, and we did it live with Anoni, who was formerly Anthony of Anthony and the Johnsons, and it just had this amazing build, and it was like an R&B opera. It was really incredible. I can't pull the name of the song out.
How did you pull that from Marianne? Because her whole rock career has been so against the grain.
Because I said to her, and we did Solitude by Duke Ellington, which she sang in one
What?
take. Oh yeah, an amazing arrangement of Solitude with Marianne, and she sang live with us in one take.
I gotta hear this.
No, it's amazing. It's like putting, it was like an Ellington arrangement, but with like a Bobby Womack vibe on it.
Wow.
Putting like a Bobby Womack groove, but with Ellington clarinets on it. And I said, Marianne, how'd you do that? And she goes, well, darling, this music was on the radio when I was young. Right? So what did Marianne Faithfull hear when she was 8 years old on the radio?
She was listening to all of that.
Sounds like Solitude.
Yeah.
By Billie Holiday.
Yeah.
So she's like, I know that music. So she was just a really great musician, and the Bessie Smith song was really kind of like, wow, I can't believe she pulled that one off, but she did. And but then also the stuff I did for Levon. I mean, playing, and I did one with Levon and Mavis, and I wrote a real like slide type of like horn thing, just like pops, just little. That would just push the rhythm ahead, but with Levon on drums and Mavis singing. Oh man!
Was this before he died?
Yeah, it was before he died.
Yes, right before he died. Right.
The records, they put it out posthumously.
Right.
It's Mavis Staples and Levon Helm together.
Well,
Came out recently.
They had that history with the band, that last waltz. So
Mavis is Amy Helm's, Levon's daughter's godmother.
God, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Levon loved Mavis, and Mavis loved Levon. And the fact that I got to write a super funky horn chart in my total style, like when I listened to it, I was like, oh, that's me. Because it was one of those things that like we recorded it and then it didn't come out for like 10 years or 15 years, and and we didn't even remember who wrote all the charts because it was done really quick. And then I hear like 2 notes, I'm like, oh, that's me. That's like my stuff. And the fact that I got to do that with Mavis and Levon, like 2 icons of American music, but throwing that like East Bay thing in there,
right,
you know.
right.
And then I got to do a live thing with U2 that was put out on their like fan club record labels, and it was called with the Sun Ra Orchestra and the Sex Mob Orchestra. So there were 6 people or 5 people from Sun Ra's orchestra, 6 people from my crew, and including, she wasn't quite famous back then, Lakeisha Benjamin.
Oh, wow.
And James Carter.
Oh, wow.
And me and Brigham from Sex Mob, and then 2 of my favorite trombone players, Curtis Foltz and Earl McIntyre, who was from Carla Bley's band, and Frank Green on lead trumpet, Bria Stromberg, and then you have Marshall Allen, and Danny Thompson, and Michael Ray, wow. and Noel, I always forget Noel's last name, the saxophone player who leads the orchestra now. And, you know, just, that was such a Hal moment that like I got to do that with U2. It was powerful.
Now, I've read a lot of crazy things about U2. I mean, especially the Edge and Adam. They're real stringent when it comes to recording and letting somebody into their process. They gotta be, I mean, was it Daniel Lanois?
Oh yeah.
He's, you know, he pulled out some magic with that band, but you getting inside of that psyche, how was that? Because I know they're real.
Well, again, everybody trusted Hal so much. They were just like, well, if Hal says this is it, then this, you know, I'll tell you. And then I'll tell you a funny thing though. On Hal's memorial, only Edge and Bono showed up. So it was basically Edge and Bono with Sex Mob playing U2. I forget what U2 song we did, but one of their famous songs, and it was like basically Sex Mob backing up Edge and Bono. And they were so happy, man. They turned around and they said to me, wow, man, those guys never listen to us like that, like their own band. You know? My guys were like on them, like white on. I said, well, they're jazz musicians, you know. It's like, you know, that's what they do. They listen, they react, you know. But you know, I gotta say, like, Hal was such the fact that I always came in. I'm not with Levon. That was a little different, but you know, Levon treated me like a son. And I think Levon, he told me like he really liked the fact that a jazz musician. Because I didn't approach it like a rock musician. You know, I come from another world. But I really loved the way Levon's music was, and I think he really liked that there was a guy coming into his orbit, coming from that world, you know. But most of the things in my life have come through Hal. And people, like, it was just this idea, like, if you came in through the Hal door, people would trust you. Because they knew if it was coming through Hal, it wasn't what they expected. That's why you have Hal there.
Right. Yeah, his projects, all the
they're unexpected.
Yeah.
So they know they're gonna get. They're like, well, it's probably not gonna be what I expect, but Hal's bringing it. So let me see what happens. And Hal really, you know, like that world was.
So you learned through him.
Yeah.
The power of infinite. It can go anywhere.
Right. And I will call Hal like you know, beautiful chaos. Because how would allow chaos to happen? Let me tell you a great story. And because the thing is, yeah, you can plan. I've done plenty of shows. I've done rock shows. I've done Broadway shows where you know what's going to be every night, and that's what it is. And the thing is, when you allow beautiful chaos, like you heard today, there might be some moments where, like, I don't know what's going on. I'm like, whoa, okay, I don't know how we're going to get back, but we'll get back. This is an amazing moment, and you can see it in the Still Bill movie. We were doing a tribute to Bill Withers.
The Prospect Park, yeah.
Right. So let me tell you an amazing story. It used to bring tears to my eyes. So again, it was very interesting. When Hal first did the Bill Withers project, he said, "Now I'm gonna do this project. I'm gonna need to call a black musical director for this." I said, "Hal, I totally understand, right?" So he reached out to all the heavies, you know, get a call back because I never had a lot of money.
Right.
He said, well, I think you're gonna do it. I'm gonna have to, I can't get anyone to answer me back. I said, I'll do it. I said, but here's what we're gonna do. We'll call, the band Harriet Tubman. I said, we'll have Harriet Tubman be the band. We'll have, because, come on.
Yeah.
There we go. That's Harriet Tubman. Right?
So you, in the midst of this, not to cut you off, you couldn't go to the original source, Booker T. Jones?
I don't think Booker T. Jones would work for the money Hal had.
Makes sense.
You know what I'm saying? Hal did not have, I mean, if you were to do a Hal show, you were doing it to be around Hal.
Hal, right.
Hal show did not, they were not money makers. They were like, Hal would lose money because he would always invite everyone in the world. But one thing I said to Hal was, can we hire Cornell to do? I said, he's living in Texas. I know he's not super healthy, but if we could just get Cornell, because I knew Cornell when living. Cornell was my hero growing up. I love those Stuff records. I love Cornell's playing, and I played with him in New York a few times, and he was on a lot of those Bill Withers records.
Yeah.
And I said, can we get Cornell just as a special guest? And they found money to get Cornell up there. And now Bill, at that point, had not sung in public for a very long time. And we're doing, again, taking all the songs into like My Zone, throwing in all these different things there, and of course it's Melvin Gibbs and J.T. Lewis and Brandon. It's not your typical R&B rhythm section, right? And we have a string section, and we got all this kind of stuff going on, and Hal was very open to things. And I said, Hal, well, what's your Cornell? Hal said, Hal, what do you think Cornell should do? And Hal said, well, what do you think he should do? I said, well, man, I've been listening to a Staple Singers record on my way to rehearsal. I was thinking Hal would have an answer for me. They didn't. On the Staple Singers record is Grandma's Hand. I said, well, I was just listening to Grandma's Hands. Why don't we ask Cornell to do that? So, you couldn't imagine what Cornell was playing. Playing Grandma's Hands. Just really stripped down, like just organ, drums, Cornell, a little bit of bass. Just let that beautiful Cornell to breathe things happen. Now Cornell at that point, when people have a breathing issues, they have to have like the tubes in their nose, and they have a small, very small oxygen tank, but he had to have one. And, he looked very good. Cornell always looked great, but it's his face, because his face is a little puffy from the steroids, but dressed very well and clean. But it's clear that Bill's in the audience sitting with Bernie Drake. Bernard Drake.
Yes.
And here's a story, because I heard it from the source. It's kind of deep. He looks at Bernard and says, that's my old friend Cornell. I don't know if I'm ever going to see him again. And he gets out of the seat, walks through the crowd, up the side, up the front of the Prospect Park stage. I see him coming up. I pull a chair up, pull a chair next to Cornell. He puts his hand on Cornell's knee to give him a microphone. Man, this is hard. This is like, and he sings to Cornell. For the audience, but singing like, I'm probably never, basically saying, I'm probably never gonna see you again. So let's I'm gonna sing this song with you. It was heavy, man. But that can only happen in a house show, because you're allowing those unscripted, you're creating environments where anything can happen. You're not saying, here's a show. You're saying, okay, this could be anything. And that was like, talk about a heavy Hal Wilner moment, man.
That'll do it again for this very special edition of the Pace Report, reporting live at this year's 2025 Jersey City Jazz Festival here in Exchange Place, here in the heart of downtown Jersey City, New Jersey. I'd like to personally thank the incomparable Stephen Bernstein for his time. For more information on his upcoming tour dates and projects, please visit him online at stephenbernstein.com. I also like to give a mad shout out to the staff and management at Riverview Jazz, Brian Bennyhoe, artistic director of the Jersey City Jazz Festival. You did a fantastic job, and your staff and volunteers. You guys keep doing the work. For more information on next year's Jazz Festival, please visit them online at riverviewjazz.org. As always, people, I can't stress this more than enough. Please like, share, and subscribe to my videos on Vimeo and YouTube, and leave comments, as well as follow me on social media by way of Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Till next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Till next time, peace.
Well, I've been all across